There are moments when the universe itself holds its breath. When the fabric of reality grows thin, stretched taut between opposing forces so immense that existence can do nothing but tremble and wait. This was one of those moments. Thor Odinson, god of thunder, prince of Asgard, stood at the edge of a collapsing star realm with lightning dancing across his arms like living serpents. His eyes glowed with the blue-white fury of 1,000 storms, and Stormbreaker sang in his grip, a weapon forged in the heart of a dying star, now called upon to save another. Across from him, the Hulk roared defiance at the impossible. The Green Titan's muscles rippled with gamma radiation so intense it warped the very air, creating heat mirages in the vacuum of space itself. They faced something ancient, something that predated gods and monsters alike. A celestial corrupted by energies unknown, its cosmic armor cracked and bleeding reality itself. Or perhaps it was something worse. Something that wore the shape of a celestial like a skin, puppeteering divinity toward universal collapse. The details didn't matter. What mattered was that if it wasn't stopped here, entire galaxies would fold inward like paper thrown into flame. Thor bellowed an ancient war cry and called down the Bifrost itself, channeling energies that Asgard's sorcerers had sworn could never be weaponized. Rainbow light became a spear of pure cosmic force. Hulk didn't speak, he never needed to when anger said everything. He leaped with such velocity that space-time rippled, his fist cocked back to deliver a blow that could shatter moons. They struck simultaneously. For a single, perfect instant, heroism and rage unified into something transcendent. Thunder and gamma radiation fused at the point of impact, creating something the universe had never witnessed before. A new color born between green and blue. A sound that existed before sound had meaning. The celestial entity screamed, or perhaps reality screamed through it, and the star realm began to collapse, not inward, but sideways. Thor felt it first. His divine senses, honed across millennia, detected the wrongness immediately. This wasn't victory. This was catastrophe. "Banner, we must," he started to shout, but his words dissolved into static. The collapsing star realm wasn't dying. It was inverting. Hulk felt it as pain, which made him angrier, which made him stronger, which made everything worse. He reached for the nearest solid thing, a fragment of stellar core, and hurled it at the corruption. The throw generated enough force to ignite the fragment into a newborn star. It changed nothing. The rupture spread like a crack in glass viewed through a kaleidoscope. Reality fragmented into possibilities, each shard reflecting a different potential universe, and all of them screaming. Thor's lightning tried to seal the breach, but lightning couldn't suture dimensions. Hulk's rage tried to smash it closed, but you cannot punch a concept. Thor realized what was happening a heartbeat before it consumed them. His warrior's instinct, the same instinct that had carried him through Ragnarok and the snap in every apocalypse before, screamed a single word: run. But gods do not run. Heroes do not abandon the innocent. And Thor Odinson had never learned to do either. He reached for Hulk instead. His hand found green skin just as the rupture swallowed them whole. The last thing Thor saw of his universe was the distant glimmer of Earth, impossibly far away, impossibly fragile, impossibly precious. The last thing Hulk saw was red. Just endless, screaming, hungry red. They fell through a space that wasn't space. They tumbled through colors that had no names and sounds that existed only as memory of pain. Thor's divine nature kept him conscious barely. He could sense Hulk beside him, rage incarnate, fighting against the nothing that surrounded them, punching at unreality itself. Then they hit something. Not ground, not water, not air. They hit existence again, but existence viewed through a mirror built from nightmares and broken faith. Thor awoke first. His warrior's mind cataloged his situation instantly. Separated from Hulk, surrounded by impossible geometry, breathing air that tasted of copper and incense and burning sulfur. He stood slowly, Stormbreaker still in his grip, lightning still crackling across his shoulders. But the lightning felt wrong here. Tainted. As though the very laws of nature that gave him power operated under different, darker rules. The sky, if it could be called a sky, shifted between purple and crimson in shades that hurt to perceive. Shapes moved within it. Vast. Hungry. Thor's divine senses, which had always detected the presence of other gods, suddenly screamed with sensation. There were gods here. Dozens. Hundreds. Thousands. But they were wrong. Twisted. Gods built not from worship and wonder, but from appetite and anguish. Miles away, or perhaps inches away in this place where distance was negotiable, Hulk crashed into consciousness with a roar that shattered the knot ground beneath him. He rose from a crater of his own making, gamma radiation flaring around him like a toxic halo. The anger that defined him, that sustained him, that was him, suddenly had company. He could feel rage pressing against his own. Not challenging it, welcoming it, calling to it like recognizes life. An ocean of fury vast enough to drown galaxies, and it wanted him to dive in. Hulk's response was simple. He roared back. His defiance shook the unreality around him. Whatever wanted to claim his anger would have to fight him for it. And Hulk had never lost a fight he was angry enough to win. Elsewhere in the Warp 4, that was where they had fallen. Though neither yet knew the name, things older than evolution and crueler than entropy took notice. 4 thrones upon which sat 4 obscenities opened eyes that were not eyes, and gazed upon the newcomers. A god who commanded thunder and wore nobility like armor. A monster who embodied rage as pure and absolute as mathematics. The dark gods smiled. Or what passed for smiling among beings who had forgotten what mouths were for besides screaming. The Immaterium had sent them gifts. The warp does not welcome. It consumes. It doesn't merely corrupt flesh and twist bony, rewrites identity itself, replacing what you were with what you feared you always had been. It finds the weakness in your soul and excavates it like rot from wood until only the cavity remains. Thor Odinson stood in the screaming unreality and remembered who he was. Prince of Asgard, defender of Midgard, wielder of Stormbreaker, son of Odin, friend of mortals, god of thunder. Each title was a shield, each memory a ward against the howling madness that pressed against him from every direction. The warp saw him and hungered. Here was divinity unprotected by belief, godflesh walking naked through a realm built from the dreams and nightmares of trillions. Demons came first. Lesser things, barely coherent, more concept than creature. They wore shapes stolen from prey-animal nightmares, too many teeth, too many eyes, geometries that suggested pain. They circled him like sharks scenting blood, whispering in voices that bypassed ears and spoke directly to doubt. Asterisk, you are far from home, Thunder God. Asterisk, asterisk, your father is dead. Your brother betrayed you. Your people are scattered. Asterisk, asterisk, you fail. You fail everyone. You are worthy of nothing. Asterisk, Thor raised Stormbreaker and called down lightning. The storm that answered was divine judgment made manifest. Not merely electricity, but the fundamental force of a god's will imposed upon reality. Where it struck, demons didn't just die, they ceased to have ever been. The warp itself recoiled from him like flesh from flame. Thor's soul burned too bright, too pure, forged through too much genuine suffering and genuine growth to be so easily corrupted. He was not arrogant. He had been once, long ago. But loss had taught him humility, and humility had taught him strength. The warp found no purchase in his pride, because his pride had been beaten into wisdom on the anvil of failure and resurrection. More demons came, larger ones, greater obscenities wearing authority like stolen crowns. They attacked with claws made of broken promises and teeth forged from abandoned faith. Thor met them with thunder and sent them shrieking back into the unreality that spawned them. Miles away, Hulk faced a different trial. The warp looked at the Hulk and saw something it had never encountered before, rage without complexity. Pure, absolute, uncomplicated by philosophy or doubt or fear. Hulk was angry. That was all. That was everything. Demons manifested before him, things of blood and brass, creatures born from the same fundamental fury that powered him. They believed they understood him. They believed kinship gave them advantage. They were wrong. The first demon lunged with claws extended. Hulk caught it mid-strike and tore it in half like wet paper. The second tried to match his rage with its own. Hulk headbutted it into non-existence. The third attempted to amplify his anger, to turn his strength against him. Hulk simply got angrier and stronger, flattening the psychic assault through sheer emotional momentum. The warp feeds on feeling. It grows fat on emotion, converting anger into power, despair into manifestation, pleasure into corruption. But Hulk's rage was too simple, too pure, too absolute. It was a wall rather than a feast. Emotion so concentrated it had achieved density, becoming impenetrable rather than consumable. He waded through demon hordes like a man walking through fog. Each swing of his fists destroyed dozens. Each roar shattered warp geometry back into formless potential. He didn't strategize or plan or question. He just fought. And in a realm built from thought and nightmare, his thoughtlessness became invincibility. Deep in their impossible domains, the dark gods watched and reconsidered. Khorne the blood god leaned forward on his brass throne.
Here was violence in its purest form.
Rage without philosophy, destruction without apology. Every chaos god claimed aspects of mortal emotion, but this creature embodied fury so completely that even Khorne felt something approaching respect. Or perhaps hunger. The distinction was meaningless to a god who measured affection in skulls. Sinche, architect of fate, gazed upon Thor through 1,000,000 eyes and saw nothing.
No future. No fate. No destiny.
The Asgardian's timeline simply stopped at the moment of his arrival, as though he had fallen out of causality itself.
Sinch, who knew every plan before it was conceived, could not predict what the Thunder God would do next.
The impossibility was intoxicating and infuriating in equal measure. Nurgle, grandfather of plagues, sent his blessings and watched them slide off both newcomers like water from oiled steel. The Thunder God's divine nature rejected corruption at a cellular level. The green monster's gamma-saturated biology simply mutated faster than even chaos could corrupt. Nurgle laughed anyway. He always laughed but privately wondered if perhaps these were not gifts after all. Slaanesh, the Prince of Pleasure, observed with detached curiosity and found nothing to grasp. The Thunder God's pleasures were simple: duty, friendship, battle. The green monster knew only rage. There was no excess to exploit, no desire to amplify, no sensation to corrupt into addiction. They were, in their own ways, psychologically immune. 4 gods who had broken galaxies and feasted on civilizations discovered something unprecedented: limitations. Thor carved a path through the warp, through sheer stubborn heroism, every step an assertion of identity against a realm that existed to dissolve identity. He thought of his friends. He remembered his oaths. He carried the weight of who he had chosen to become, and that weight anchored him against the storm.
Hulk simply refused to stop being angry.
The warp whispered that his rage could be greater. He responded by proving it couldn't. The warp promised power. He demonstrated he already had all the power he needed. The warp threatened oblivion. He threatened it right back. And somewhere in the howling chaos, 2 impossible trajectories began to curve toward the Immaterium. Toward real space. Toward a galaxy where war was eternal and hope had been ritually executed 10,000 years ago. The Imperium of man was about to discover that some things were too stubborn to corrupt.
And too angry to stop.
The shrine world of Calistria Minor had seen better centuries. Its cathedrals still reached toward the stars with Gothic arrogance, but their foundations trembled. Chaos cultists had emerged from the underhives like infection from a wound, and now the skies wept blood rain while demons scratched at the veil between realities. 10,000 Imperial guardsmen held the line.
Barely.
Commissar Venko stood on the cathedral steps and calculated how many men he'd need to execute to restore morale. The math was grim. Above him, the sky split open. Not with the Paciello corruption of a warp breach. Not with the sickly purple of demonic manifestation. This was different. Lightning pure, clean, angry lightning carved a wound in reality, and through it fell a figure clad in worn armor that somehow still suggested royalty. Thor crashed into Calistria's desecrated ground like divine judgment made manifest. The impact crater glowed with residual Bifrost energy. He rose slowly, taking in the scene with eyes that had witnessed Ragnarok and found this familiar. Demons.
Innocence.
A battle between heroism and annihilation.
He'd fought this fight before.
A bloodletter charged him, brass blade raised, howling in a language that predated sanity. Thor caught the blade with his bare hand, crushed it to fragments, and replied with Stormbreaker. The demon's death scream echoed across 3 dimensions.
More came.
Thor met them with storm and fury, his lightning not merely destroying but purifying, burning away corruption with the absolute certainty of godly will. The guardsmen stared. Commissar Venko forgot about executing anyone and started praying instead. Thor fought like heroes were supposed to fight, not with cruelty or excess, but with purpose. He positioned himself between the demons and the civilians. He called down lightning that struck only the enemy. When a squad of guardsmen fell back in terror, he steadied them with a voice that carried authority earned through millennia. "Stand with me," he said simply, "and we will prevail."
They did. Not because they weren't afraid,
but because fear seemed somehow smaller when a god stood beside you and treated you like an equal. 3,000 miles away, on the Manufactorum world of Pharaoh's Omega, Hulk's arrival was less poetic. The planet's massive forge complexes had fallen to traitor forces, cultists and heretics who'd sold their souls for the power to overthrow their oppressors, only to discover their new masters were infinitely worse. Traitor tanks rolled through streets lined with crucified servitors. Chaos Space Marines stalked through the smoke, painting cornate runes in the blood of anyone too slow to flee. Then the sky cracked, and Hulk fell through it like a meteor of pure rage. His impact vaporized 3 city blocks. The shockwave shattered windows for miles. He rose from the crater already roaring, already swinging, already destroying everything within reach. A Chaos Rhino turned its guns on him. He tore the turret off and beat the vehicle to scrap of its own weapon.
A pack of bloodletters charged.
He clapped his hands together, and the pressure wave reduced them to mist. Hulk didn't distinguish between cultist and loyalist.
He didn't recognize the iconography.
He only knew that everything here smelled like battle and blood, and that meant enemies.
A PDF trooper screamed and ran.
Hulk let him go. Running meant not fighting, which meant not an enemy. A Chaos Champion stepped forward, challenge on his corrupted lips. Hulk's fist went through his chest like the armor was paper. Where Thor brought hope, Hulk brought terror. The difference was that he terrified everyone equally. Across both worlds, Imperial observers scrambled to understand what they were witnessing. Augurs overloaded.
Picked captures showed impossible reading.
And when psychers tried to scan the newcomers, they screamed. Brother telepathist Karn of the Scholastica Psychana pressed his third eye to Thor's psychic presence and saw a star.
Not metaphorically. Literally.
A burning stellar core of identity and purpose, so bright it seared his consciousness. He collapsed, bleeding from the eyes, whispering, "Saint, saint, false saint, true saint. How do we categorize the divine?" Sister Astrid touched her mind to Hulk's psyche for a fraction of a second before emergency protocols severed the connection. She spent the next 3 days catatonic, and when she finally spoke, she could only repeat one phrase. "He just keeps getting angrier. There's no ceiling, no limit. He just keeps going." Within hours, both worlds had requested inquisitorial intervention. Within days, Inquisitor Covenant arrived at Calistria Minor, while Inquisitor Gast made planetfall on Pharaoh's Omega. They came prepared for anything: demon princes, corrupted saints, Xenos infiltration.
They found something worse. Anomalies they couldn't classify.
Thor had single-handedly repelled the Chaos incursion and then helped civilians rebuild shelters. He spoke respectfully to common soldiers and declined all offers of worship. When asked his origin, he answered honestly, "Another universe, another war, an accident that brought him here." He offered no threats. He requested only information about where he was and how to find his companion. Inquisitor Covenant's conclusion. Either the most sophisticated infiltration attempt in Imperial history, or genuine divine intervention so far outside doctrine, it might as well be heresy. Hulk had smashed every hostile force on Pharaoh's Omega and then stopped. He sat in the ruins, visibly restraining himself, gamma radiation pulsing around him like a heartbeat. When Inquisitor Gast approached with a full complement of stormtroopers, Hulk simply watched.
Waiting. Calculating whether they were enemies.
Gast's conclusion. A Xenos bioweapon of catastrophic potential.
Possibly sentient. Definitely unstable.
Impossible to contain through conventional means. Both Inquisitors ordered the same thing: detainment.
Not arrest. Not execution. Detainment.
Because neither knew what else to do with something that exceeded every threat assessment protocol and yet hadn't quite become an enemy. Thor allowed himself to be detained because cooperation seemed diplomatic. They led him to a reinforced chamber designed to hold rogue psychers, treated him with cautious respect, and asked questions he answered with patient honesty. Hulk allowed himself to be detained because the alternative was fighting people who hadn't attacked him first. They led him to a containment facility built to hold captured Xenos, watched him through 6 feet of reinforced steel, and spoke to him in careful, measured tones. He responded with grunts and glares. Banner was in there somewhere, calculating, but Hulk remained in control because Hulk didn't trust these armored strangers. Neither Thor nor Hulk knew it yet, but they'd been separated by 900 light years. The Imperium had captured gods.
It had no idea what to do with them.
Inquisitor Covenant was 347 years old, sustained by juvenat treatments and augmetic replacements that made him more machine than man. He had witnessed demonic incursions, gene-stealer uprisings, Hirtech conspiracies, and one particular incident involving a corrupted saint that he'd personally incinerated from orbit.
He thought he'd seen everything. Thor Odinson made him reconsider that assumption.
The interrogation chamber was designed for psychological pressure. Harsh lighting, reinforced walls inscribed with hexagrammatic wards, a table bolted to the floor. Thor sat across from him with the casual patience of someone who'd outlived empires.
He wasn't restrained.
After the guard's third attempt to apply manacles that simply melted against his skin, Covenant had abandoned the pretense. "You claim to be a god," Covenant began.
Not a question. A test.
"I am a god," Thor replied calmly. "Or was. The distinction matters less than it once did. I have been humbled by time and circumstance. But yes, divinity runs through my veins as surely as blood runs through yours."
Heresy.
Blatant, casual heresy. Covenant's hand moved toward his bolt pistol, then stopped. Every sensor in the room confirmed the same impossible truth. No warp taint. None. Thor's presence registered as psychically clean as a saint's, burning with a purity that made consecrated ground look polluted by comparison. "There is only one God Emperor," Covenant said carefully. "All other claims to divinity are false."
Thor considered this.
"I have met many who claim ultimate authority. My father did. For a time, I have learned that power does not demand worship at earned service. Tell me of this emperor. Does he protect his people?" The question was so genuine it bypassed Covenant's defenses entirely. "He sustains us. Through his sacrifice he lights the Astronomicon. Through his will we endure." "Then he is worthy," Thor said simply. "Though I wonder at a god who demands his children suffer so he might sit enthroned. The gods I knew walked among their people." Covenant felt something crack inside his certainty. This was either the most dangerous heretic he'd ever encountered, or something his training had never prepared him for. 900 light-years away, Inquisitor Gast faced a different problem. Hulk sat in a cell designed to contain a carnifex. The walls were 3 meters of reinforced ceramite. The door was blast-rated to survive a demolisher cannon. Gast watched through armored glass as the green giant stared at nothing, breathing slowly, clearly struggling to maintain control.
Specimen displays semi-sentient behavior, Gast dictated into his data slate.
Extreme physical capability. Preliminary gene scans suggest Xeno's origin, but markers are unlike any known species. Radiation output exceeds safe levels by factors that should preclude biological function. Conclusion. Engineered bioweapon, purpose unclear. Hulk's eyes flickered toward the glass. Not angry. Not yet. Just aware. Gast had interrogated orcs, negotiated with Eldar, even communicated with a hive tyrant through psychic intermediaries before reducing it to ash. He considered himself an expert in Xeno's psychology. But when he looked at Hulk, he saw something that defied classification. Intelligence buried beneath rage, humanity struggling against monstrosity, and power so absolute it made a mockery of every weapon system in the facility. "Can you understand me?" Gast asked through the Voxcaster. Hulk rumbled.
Not word.
Not yet. But acknowledgement. We mean you no harm if you prove docile. But I will not hesitate to deploy exterminatus protocols if you prove a threat to this world. Do you comprehend? Hulk's eyes narrowed. He did comprehend. Threat.
People in danger.
The Hulk cared in his own way. He protected the small ones, even when the small ones feared him. But these people didn't smell like innocence. They smelled like soldiers and weapons and barely restrained hostility. Banner's voice whispered from deep inside. Cooperate.
Learn.
Don't give them a reason. Hulk growled but obeyed.
For now.
Within 3 days, both Inquisitors had compiled reports. They transmitted them simultaneously to the Segmentum Command, flagged with the highest urgency codes. The response came swiftly. A conclave. Both subjects would be brought before a full inquisitorial tribunal for final judgment. Thor was informed diplomatically. He agreed readily, curious to understand this Imperium structure. Hulk was informed cautiously. He grunted acceptance, mostly because Banner convinced him it was better than fighting through an entire planet. The tribunal convened aboard the strike cruiser Righteous Condemnation in neutral orbit between both worlds. 23 Inquisitors from 7 different ordos assembled, representing every philosophical faction within the Inquisition. Radical Puritans who'd burn entire worlds to kill a single demon. Moderate pragmatists willing to use Xeno's tech if it saved humanity. Radical extremists who believe the Emperors will justify at any means. They brought Thor in first. He stood before them unbowed, Stormbreaker confiscated but his dignity intact. They questioned him for 17 hours.
His origins, his powers,
his intentions, his theology. Thor answered honestly, patiently, explaining concepts of duty and heroism that felt alien to minds conditioned by 10,000 years of religious totalitarianism. Several Inquisitors argued for immediate execution. He inspired hope in common citizens.
Hope outside the Emperor's doctrine. That made him dangerous.
Others argued for exploitation. A being this powerful could be weaponized.
Unleashed against Xeno's threat.
Controlled through leverage or indoctrination. A very fou wondered if perhaps he was exactly what he claimed, a hero displaced, offering genuine assistance. They brought Hulk in next. It required 6 dreadnoughts and ceremonial guard and a null field generator just to move him from containment to the tribunal chamber. He stood in restraints that looked ridiculous against his size, glowering at everyone with barely contained fury. They tried to question him. He mostly grunted. Banner occasionally surfaced to answer in clipped, careful sentences, but Hulk never fully relinquished control. The tribunal's conclusion was unanimous: catastrophic threat. Uncontrollable. Probably Xenos. Possibly chaos corrupted despite all evidence otherwise. Immediate termination recommended. One Inquisitor asked, "But can we actually kill it?" Nobody had a good answer. The tribunal reached its final verdict after 96 hours of debate: detain indefinitely.
Study them.
Determine weaknesses. Prepare for every contingency. And if necessary, accept that killing them might require sacrificing entire worlds. Neither Thor nor Hulk knew it yet, but the Imperium had decided their fates.
Fear had won over hope. Again.
The warp does not negotiate. It invades. On Calistria Minor and Pharaoh's Omega, Reality began to hemorrhage. Not gradually, not with warning. The barrier between the Materium and Immaterium simply tore open like skin against a blade, and hell poured through. Calistria's cathedral spires cracked as warp energy surged through their foundations. The carefully maintained wards millennia of prayers and sanctification meant nothing. Demons manifested in the streets not as invaders but as inevitability. Bloodletters formed from pooled shadows.
Plague-bearers emerged from every festering wound.
The dead rose with murder in their milky eyes, and the living screamed prayers that went unanswered. On Pharaoh's Omega, the manufactorum complexes erupted with warp fire. Production lines that had forged weapons for the Imperium's wars now birthed brass-clad horrors. Every cogitator screen displayed the 8-pointed star. Every Vox speaker whispered in languages that dissolved sanity. The planet's entire industrial infrastructure became a summoning circle carved continent-wide. This wasn't random. This wasn't opportunistic chaos raiders exploiting weakened defenses. This was coordinated, purposeful,
Surgical.
Khorne had decided he wanted Hulk. Tzeentch had decided Thor's unpredictability was intolerable. The other gods agreed. These anomalies must be claimed or destroyed. Preferably the former. Thor felt the assault coming 3 seconds before reality shattered.
His divine senses screamed warning.
He turned to the guards outside his detention chambermen who'd watched him with fear and suspicion for days and said simply, "Get your people to safety, now." The lead guard sneered. "You think we take orders from?" The wall exploded inward. A greater demon of Tzeentch crawled through, all eyes and wings and impossible angles, wearing skin made from broken promises. It looked at Thor with something between hunger and amusement. "The architect desires your future, Thunder God. He will unspool your fate like thread and weave it into his grand design." Thor's response was lightning.
Pure. Furious.
It struck the demon like divine judgment and burned away 3 of its manifested forms. The creature shrieked, delighted and damaged in equal measure, already regenerating. Thor didn't wait for it to recover. He called Stormbreaker locked in a vault 3 decks below and it answered. The weapon tore through bulkheads and walls, and the hands of the guards foolish enough to try stopping it, until it slammed into Thor's palm with a thunderclap that shattered windows across the entire ship. "I have fought gods and monsters across 9 realms, Thor said, lightning gathering around him like a cloak. "You are merely another monster," he charged. The greater demon met him with reality-warping sorcery.
Space inverting.
Gravity became negotiable. Time hiccuped. Thor gritted his teeth and pushed through, because gods didn't bow to physics, they commanded it. His hammer struck true, and the demon's scream echoed across the warp itself. Behind him, the guards scrambled for civilians, their training overriding their confusion. Thor fought to give them time, his lightning carving safe paths through the demon flood, his voice booming orders that organized panicked evacuation into disciplined retreat. This is what heroes did, not because anyone ordered them, but because someone had to. Miles below in Hulk's reinforced cell, the invasion manifested differently. Bloodletters materialized inside the containment chamber, brass-skinned and hate-forged, wielding blades that wept burning ichor. They saw Hulk and recognized kin.
Violence incarnate.
Rage without apology. Khorne's servants bowed, not in worship but in respect, the way one apex predator acknowledges another. "The blood god calls you, warrior of endless fury," the lead demon rasped. "Join us. Your rage is wasted protecting weaklings. Shed their blood. Take your place at the throne of skulls. Become the weapon you were meant to be." Hulk stared at them. For a long moment he considered it. Not seriously. Not really. But Banner's consciousness analyzed the tactical reality. These demons weren't attacking. They were recruiting. And some part of Hulk, the part that was still Bruce Banner, understood the horrifying appeal. Then he remembered cowering civilians on Pharaoh's Omega. The ones he'd chosen not to smash. The scared ones who ran instead of fighting. Hulk's answer was a backhand that obliterated the lead demon into red mist. The rest attacked, joy in their embrace. Finally, a fight worthy of Khorne's attention. Finally, violence pure enough to satisfy. They swarmed Hulk with blades and fury and bloodlust ancient enough to drown stars. Hulk tore them apart. Not carefully. Not strategically. He simply grabbed and pulled and smashed and crushed until nothing remained but ichor and dissipating warp energy. More came. He killed them faster. They adapted, trying to match his rage. He got angrier, which made him stronger, which let him kill more efficiently. The containment chamber's walls buckled, then shattered. Hulk strode out into the ship's corridor, where Inquisitor Gast stood with a full complement of stormtroopers and 3 servitor-mounted plasma cannons. "Stand down," Gast commanded, finger on the trigger.
"Or we will."
A greater demon of Khorne tore through the deck plating behind him. 8 feet of brass muscle and hatred, a sword the size of a man dripping with the blood of dead gods. It roared challenge, saw Hulk, and roared again this time with something like glee. Gast fired every weapon at his disposal. The greater demon batted the plasma bolts aside like insects. Hulk hit it like a meteor. The 2 titans crashed through bulkheads, their battle shaking the entire ship. The demon's sword bit into Hulk's shoulder. He tore the blade free and broke it across his knee. The demon's fists struck with force that could level fortresses. Hulk headbutted it so hard its brass skull cracked. They fought with absolute abandon, 2 avatars of violence locked in a struggle that transcended strategy. And Hulk was winning. Because demons had limits. Hulk didn't. He grabbed the greater demon by its horns and slammed it into the deck repeatedly, each impact creating craters that exposed the void beyond. The demon laughed even as it dissolved, returning to the warp, already planning its reformation. "You fight well, mortal. Khorne will claim you, one way or another." Hulk roared his disagreement and threw the dissipating corpse into the nearest warp breach. Then he turned and saw Gast staring at him, weapons lowered, expression unreadable. For a moment man and monster regarded each other. Then Hulk grunted and ran toward the screaming, toward the fighting, toward the enemies that needed smashing. Gast watched him go and whispered, "Emperor, preserve us. It's protecting people." On Calistria, Thor carved paths of lightning through demon hordes, his hammer singing its storm song, his voice rallying terrified soldiers into organized resistance. He found the planet's highest cathedral spire now crackling with warp corruption and called down a storm so vast it rewrote the local weather patterns. The demons burned. The warp breach contracted. Thor stood at the center of the tempest, godhood fully manifest, and for just a moment the people of Calistria Minor saw what heroes looked like. Then coordinates synchronized in both their minds. A psychic pulse, an impossible sensation that bypassed language and spoke directly to recognition. Thor felt Hulk's rage and smiled grimly. His friend lived. Hulk felt Thor's lightning and grunted satisfaction. Pointy Hammerman was okay. They began fighting toward each other through separate war zones, carving paths through demon flesh and twisted reality, drawn together by something deeper than friendship. Brotherhood forged in battle. They didn't reunite for 17 hours. When they finally stood back to back on a contested defense platform between the 2 worlds, surrounded by demon corpses and exhausted Imperial troops, Thor simply said, "I was worried, friend." Hulk grunted. Hulk smashed them. I saw. It was glorious. Behind them, Inquisitor's Covenant and Gast watched through picked feeds. 1 god and 1 monster, fighting in perfect synchronization, protecting people who feared them. Covenant whispered, "The Emperor forgive me, but I believe them." Gast nodded slowly. The question now is whether the Imperium does. Above them, in the warp, the dark gods recalculated. These anomalies couldn't be claimed easily, but perhaps they could still be destroyed. All it would take was turning the Imperium's fear into weapons. The galaxy's capacity for self-destruction had always been its most predictable trait. The Thunderhawk descended like a judgment from the heavens, black and gold ceramite gleaming even through the ash clouds. Aquila emblems marked it as ultramarine sons of Guilliman, exemplars of the Codex Astartes, the closest thing the Imperium had to perfect soldiers. They landed on the contested platform with magnetic clamps engaging, assault ramps dropping, and 20 Space Marines emerging in perfect formation.
Captain Andros led them.
300 years of service marked his armor and purity seals and honor studs. He'd fought orcs on Armageddon, purged gene-stealer cults in the Eastern Fringe, stood in the breach during Abaddon's 13th Black Crusade. He had seen Xeno's horrors, chaos abominations, and technological nightmares. He believed nothing could surprise him.
Then he saw Thor.
The Asgardian stood amidst a crater field of his own making, lightning still crackling across Stormbreaker. His presence radiating power that even the Astartes psycho-conditioning couldn't dismiss. He wasn't as large as a space marine, but size felt irrelevant. This was density of presence rather than mass.
Authority worn like skin.
Beside him, Hulk cracked his knuckles. Louder than the Thunderhawk's engines.
Captain Andros activated his Vox speaker.
Unknown entities, you have violated Imperial space and engaged in unauthorized military action. Surrender yourselves to Astartes custody for processing. Thor studied the Space Marines with an expression somewhere between curiosity and respect. He'd fought alongside enhanced warriors before Asgard's berserkers, Midgard's champions, strange allies from stranger realms. These felt similar. Dangerous. Disciplined. Utterly certain of their righteousness. "We mean your Imperium no harm," Thor replied, his voice carrying clearly despite the wind. "We defended your people from demonic invasion. Would you have us stand aside while innocents perished?" "Your intentions are irrelevant," Andros replied. "You are anomalies, unclassified, potentially corrupted. You will comply." Hulk snorted. "Pontiama man thinks he gives orders. I advise you contain that creature," Andros said to Thor, "before force becomes necessary." Thor's expression hardened. "He is not a creature, he is my companion, and if you believe force will serve you here, you are gravely mistaken." The Ultramarines' formation shifted subtly. Bolters tracked Hulk.
Plasma guns charged.
Every Astartes calculated firing solutions while simultaneously praying they wouldn't need them. Then a younger Marine brother, Cestus, barely a century in service, saw something the others didn't. Saw how Thor positioned himself slightly in front of civilian survivors. Saw how Hulk, despite his aggressive posture, kept civilians behind him. They weren't threatening anyone. They were protecting. Cestus stepped forward, lowering his bolter slightly. "Captain, permission to speak?" "Denied. Return to formation." Cestus ignored the order. It went against every conditioning, every drill, every instinct beaten into him through hypnodoctrination. But something deeper, something that might have been conscience-demanded voice. "They're heroes, Captain. Look at them. They fight like the Primarchs must have fought in the old days." Several Marines stiffened at the borderline heresy. Comparing unknown anomalies to the Emperor's sons approached blasphemy. But none of them contradicted Cestus, because they all saw it too. Before Andros could respond, another Thunderhawk arrived. This one bore darker colors, Black Templars. Where Ultramarines embodied discipline, Black Templars weaponized zeal. They landed harder, emerged angrier, and their Castellan a veteran named Siegfried, whose armor bore more kill markings than Bear Ceremit, assessed the situation in seconds.
"Which things?" Siegfried pronounced.
"I feel the unnatural power radiating from them. This reeks of sorcery." Thor turned to face the new arrivals. "I am no witch. I am Thor, son of Odin, and my power is my birthright. I do not steal it from dark gods or forbidden knowledge." "Arrogance," Siegfried spat. "You claim divinity. There is only one God Emperor. Your existence is heresy." "Then your Emperor is a jealous god," Thor replied calmly.
"And jealous gods are often the weakest."
The Black Templars raised their weapons as one. The Ultramarines tensed. For a moment, all of humanity's finest warriors pointed death at a single target. Hulk stepped forward. "Anyone shoots Thor, Hulk smashes everyone."
Not a threat. A statement of fact. Simple. Absolute.
Captain Andros made a decision that would haunt his reports for years. He lowered his bolter. "Stand down," he ordered his squad.
No firing without my command.
Siegfried turned on him, fury in his vox-distorted voice. You dare show weakness before I dare show tactical sense, Andros cut him off. Our mission is threat assessment, not martyrdom. If we engage, casualties will be catastrophic. Look at them. Castellan, truly look. They've been fighting demons for 17 straight hours. They're not even tired.
It was true. Thor's armor was scorched and dented, but he stood ready.
Hulk's skin was lacerated in places, wounds already healing, but his eyes burned with undiminished fury. They hadn't just survived the demonic assault. They dominated it. Siegfried looked, and what he saw challenged everything. His entire existence revolved around being the Emperor's finest warrior.
Genetically superior.
Hypoconditioned. Equipped with the Imperium's most advanced weapons. He was posthuman perfection. And these two made him feel inadequate. Test them, Siegfried said suddenly. Honorable combat, one of yours against one of theirs. We will see what manner of warriors they truly are. Thor shook his head. I do not fight to prove worth to those who've already judged me unworthy. Then you are a coward as well as a heretic.
That changed Thor's expression, not to anger,
to something colder.
Disappointment.
He'd heard that taunt before, millennia ago, from a version of himself he'd outgrown. Very well, I accept your challenge, but know that I do this to prevent bloodshed, not to satisfy pride. Hulk grumbled. Thor don't need to prove anything to small angry men. I know, friend. But sometimes small angry men need someone to prove things to themselves. Brother Cestus stepped forward before anyone else could volunteer. I will face the Thunder God. If I fall, let it be recorded that I believed him honorable. The two sides drew back, creating an impromptu arena amid the ruins.
Cestus raised his power sword.
Thor lifted Stormbreaker. For a moment, they regarded each other warrior to warrior, respect despite opposition. They clashed for 7 minutes. Cestus fought brilliantly, employing every technique in the Codex Astartes. Thor met him with centuries of divine combat experience, pulling strikes that could have killed, redirecting blows that would have crippled. It was training exercise for Thor and revelation for Cestus. He was outmatched completely, and his opponent was being gentle. Thor disarmed him with a strike that barely qualified as a tap. Cestus stood weaponless, waiting for death. Thor offered his hand instead. You fight with honor. That is rare enough to be treasured.
Cestus took the hand.
And when he turned to his captain, he said, he rivals a Primarch, maybe exceeds one. Siegfried stepped forward, chain sword roaring to life.
Then I shouted.
Hulk appeared in front of him.
Not threateningly. Just suddenly there, massive and impatient. Thor done proving things. Anyone else want to fight? Hulk ready.
Every Space Marine present stared at Hulk and simultaneously calculated that even their combined firepower might not stop him.
He wasn't just strong. He was inevitability given.
Captain Andros made his final decision. Report this to the chapter masters and pray someone wiser made the hard choices. We stand down, for now, but you will accompany us to a formal tribunal, both of you. Thor nodded. That seems reasonable.
Hulk crossed his arms but didn't argue.
Banner's voice whispered that cooperation bought time to understand this universe better. As they boarded separate Thunderhawks carefully separated to avoid accidents, Brother Cestus watched Thor go and thought heretical thoughts. Thoughts about whether the Imperium worshipped the right god. Thoughts about whether 10,000 years of stagnation had made them forget what heroism actually looked like. He would never speak those thoughts aloud.
But he wasn't the only Marine thinking them.
The conclave chamber aboard the fortress station Eternal Vigil had witnessed thousands of judgments.
Heretics sentenced to slow executions.
Corrupted officials stripped of their augmetics before being cast into space. Planetary governors condemned to exterminatus for the crime of insufficient faith. The chamber's walls were lined with the skulls of the guilty, each one a reminder that mercy was humanity's greatest weakness. Now those skulls bore witness to something unprecedented, the trial of gods. Thor stood in the accused circle, unshackled because restraints had proven pointless. He'd requested permission to keep Stormbreaker and been denied. He'd accepted this gracefully, understanding it as political theater. Around him, 73 Inquisitors formed a judgment ring, representatives from every major faction, every philosophical position, every degree of radicalism and conservatism the Inquisition contained. In a separate circle, reinforced, warded, and monitored by 6 dreadnoughts, Hulk stood with arms crossed. He'd stopped listening to the speeches 3 hours ago. Banner tracked the political currents carefully, but Hulk only cared about one thing. Were these people going to try killing Thor? Because if they tried, Hulk would need to smash everything. Inquisitor Lord Gent spoke for the prosecution. He was ancient beyond Juvenat treatments, kept alive by machinery and spite in equal measure. His voice crackled through vox augmetics like grinding metal. 27 worlds have now reported sightings of these entities. On each world, they have engaged in unauthorized military action. They have defied proper authority. They have inspired dangerous ideas in the common citizenry, ideas of heroism, of individual action, of hope placed in beings other than the Emperor. He paused for effect, servosculls recording every word for dissemination across the segmentum. But most dangerous of all, they have shown our people that gods can walk among them wearing mortal flesh. They have demonstrated power without the Emperor's sanction, and in doing so, they have planted seeds of heresy that will bloom into rebellion. Thor listened without interruption, though his jaw tightened with each accusation. He'd saved lives, defended the innocent, asked nothing in return, and they condemned him. Inquisitor Covenant spoke for the minority position. They have destroyed demon forces that would have required multiple chapter deployments to contain. They have asked for nothing, threatened no one who didn't threaten them first. Our own psychers confirm no Peck priests find no biological corruption. They are guilty only of being different and refusing to pretend otherwise. Their difference is the corruption, Gent snapped back. The Emperor made humanity in his image. All deviation is mutation. All mutation is heresy. They are not human. They cannot be tolerated. Thor finally spoke, his voice carrying clearly despite speaking normally. I have walked among humans for over 1,000 years. I have bled beside them, laughed with them, mourned them. I am not human. But I have tried to honor humanity by protecting it. If that is heresy in your Imperium, then perhaps your Imperium has forgotten what honor means. The chamber erupted. Half the Inquisitors screamed for immediate execution. The other half demanded silence to hear more. Gent hammered his staff against the floor until the augmented sound created a shockwave that cracked Walseramite. You dare judge us? Gent's words dripped venom. You, who knows nothing of the threats we face. We have held back the darkness for 10,000 years through sacrifice and vigilance. Your naive heroism is a child's fantasy that gets civilizations killed. I have seen civilizations die, Thor replied quietly. I have watched my own people fall. I know the cost of failure intimately. But I also know that survival without hope is just slow death. Your Imperium has endured. Yes, but has it lived? The question hung in the air like a bomb nobody wanted to defuse. In his circle, Hulk rumbled. Banner's consciousness surfaced enough to add, he's right. You've built a system that sacrifices everything human in order to save humanity. Eventually, you won't remember what you were trying to save. Gent turned his augmetic eyes toward Hulk. And you, a creature of pure destruction, you offer nothing. You are merely a weapon that refuses to be aimed. Hulk protects, the Green Giant said simply. Saved people here, saved people on many worlds, people always scared of Hulk, but Hulk still saves them. The tragedy in those words, the fundamental loneliness of being a hero people feared resonated even in this chamber of fanatics. Several younger Inquisitors shifted uncomfortably. Then came the vote. 61 Inquisitors declared them heretical threats requiring immediate termination. 12 abstained, unable to reconcile doctrine with observation. Only 10 voted for continued study with potential integration into Imperial service. The verdict was clear: death. Thor closed his eyes briefly, not in fear but in sorrow. He'd hoped foolishly, perhaps, that these people might be better than their reputation suggested. He'd wanted to believe courage and honor still meant something here. Hulk's response was more direct. He roared.
Not attacking.
Not yet. But warning. The dreadnoughts powered up their weapons. The warding fields intensified. Every Inquisitor with a weapon drew it. Before violence could erupt, the chamber doors exploded inward. Demons poured through not dozens, not hundreds, but thousands. A coordinated assault that had clearly been timed to this exact moment. The warp had been listening to the trial, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Chaos had decided that if the Imperium wouldn't claim these anomalies, it would kill everyone who tried to execute them. The logic was quintessentially Tsinkian. Create so much confusion and carnage that all outcomes serve the architect's plans. Thor called Stormbreaker from the vault where they'd locked it. The weapon tore through 17 bulkheads, 3 Inquisitors who tried stopping it, and materialized in his hand, crackling with barely restrained lightning. "If you wish to execute me," he said calmly, "you'll need to survive this first." Hulk smashed his circle's containment field like it was paper. The dreadnoughts turned their weapons on the demon flood instead, recognizing the greater threat. Hulk grinned finally, a simple problem he could solve by smashing it. The battle became legendary for its brutality. Inquisitors fought alongside the beings they'd condemned. Space Marines arrived within minutes and found themselves fighting beside a god and monster against demon hordes. Thor's lightning carved corridors through the enemy. Hulk's fury created walls of broken demon corpses. When the assault finally broke, 3 hours later, 90,000 demons had been banished. 43 Inquisitors lay dead. The Eternal Vigil station was structurally compromised and venting atmosphere from 6,000 breaches. And Thor and Hulk stood at the center of the carnage, having saved the lives of the people who'd sentenced them to death. Inquisitor Lord Gent stared at them through blood-matted eyes.
His augmetic legs had been torn away.
He was dying, but he still managed to spit. Changes nothing. Verdict stands. You die. For the Emperor's peace. Thor knelt beside him, genuine compassion in his eyes. Your Emperor failed you. He made you so afraid of weakness that you destroy your own strengths. I pity you. Gent died, still trying to speak condemnation. Captain Andros approached slowly, bolter lowered. The station is lost. We're evacuating. You should run. Take a ship. Leave this sector. Maybe they'll stop hunting you. Thor looked at Hulk. Hulk shrugged. Hulk likes smashing demons, but Hulk tired of scared, angry men shooting at Thor. Thor nodded. We leave, but not because we fear them, because staying would only cause more death. They departed aboard a stolen merchant vessel, leaving behind an Imperium that couldn't decide whether they'd witnessed miracles or catastrophes. Most chose catastrophe. It fit the doctrine better. The sector of space designated Ultima Obscuris had been contested territory for 3 centuries. Chaos warbands raided from the maelstrom. Orcs migrated through in endless wags. Imperial forces held 17 fortress worlds and a perimeter that cost 10 million lives annually to maintain. It was brutal, grinding attrition warfare where victory was measured in decades and defeat in minutes. Then Thor and Hulk arrived, and the entire strategic paradigm collapsed. Their stolen merchant vessel renamed the Wanderer's Hope by Thor, though Hulk just grunted when Ask dropped out of warp translation near the besieged world of Sanctum Threshold. The planet was dying slowly. 3 chaos fleets encircled it. Traitor forces had penetrated the lower hive cities. Imperial defenders held the upper spires through sheer desperation. Standard doctrine estimated 6 weeks until planetary collapse. Thor looked at the tactical display and made a decision that would have earned him court-martial in any organized military. We intervene. Banner's voice surfaced briefly. We don't even know these people. They tried to execute us. Why should we? Because they need help, Thor replied simply. And because whether they acknowledge it or not, we are still heroes. Hulk pounded one fist into his palm.
Hulk agrees. Time to smash.
The Wanderer's Hope broadcast on all Imperial frequencies. Defenders of Sanctum Threshold, this is Thor of Asgard. Reinforcements have arrived. Hold your positions. Victory comes. The Imperial response was predictably paranoid. Admiral Corvus, commanding the defense fleet, immediately issued challenge protocols. Unknown vessel, you are ordered to identify yourselves properly or be fired upon. Thor's reply was to leap from the cargo bay without a void suit and call down lightning in the middle of space.
It should have been impossible.
Lightning requires atmosphere, charged particles, a medium for electrical discharge.
But Thor wasn't bound by should.
He was a god, and when a god demanded lightning, physics renegotiated its terms. The storm that manifested around him was visible across the void, crackling blue-white energy that arced between debris and wrecked ships, gathering around him like a cloak. He flew because, of course, he flew toward the nearest Chaos cruiser and brought the storm with him. The blasphemous Rapture asterisk, a vessel serving Slaanesh, had terrorized this sector for decades. Its hull was scarred with obscene runes. Its crew were lost to pleasure madness. When Thor crashed into its hull, the entire vessel shuddered. When his hammer struck the corrupted adamantium, a kilometer-long gash opened to void. When his lightning poured inside, demons and cultists alike burned. The cruiser died in 11 minutes. Thor emerged from its corpse crackling with power and moved to the next target. Meanwhile, Hulk took a more direct approach. He had them fire him at the planet.
Not in a drop pod.
Not with any safety equipment. They literally loaded him into a torpedo tube, the only thing large enough, and launched him at maximum velocity towards Sanctum Threshold's primary hive city.
Hulk hit the atmosphere at orbital speeds.
The friction should have vaporized him. Instead, he just got angrier at being hot. He plummeted through cloud layers glowing cherry red from re-entry heat, punched through the hive city's upper levels like they were tissue paper, and crashed into the contested manufactory district where Chaos forces had pushed Imperial defenders into a final desperate stand. His impact crater was 40 meters wide and glowing. He rose from it, angrier than when he'd started, and charged. A Chaos dreadnought turned to engage him, ancient, corrupted machinery piloted by a traitor who'd sold his soul millennia ago. It raised a power fist capable of crushing battle tanks. Hulk caught the fist mid-swing, tore the arm off at the shoulder, and beat the dreadnought to death with its own limb. The Chaos forces faltered. Not because Hulk was strong, they'd faced strong enemies before, but because he was relentless.
Unkillable.
Every wound healed. Every attack made him angrier and therefore stronger. He waded through their formations like a natural disaster given purpose, and that purpose was violence. Imperial guardsmen watched from their barricades, unsure whether to shoot or cheer. Commissar Hellstrom made the decision for them. Whatever that thing is, it's killing traitors. Advance behind it, for the Emperor. The momentum shifted. With Hulk as a living battering ram, Imperial forces pushed forward.
Chaos lines broke.
Traitor morale shattered, a rare occurrence for those already damned. In orbit, Thor had destroyed 3 more capital ships and crippled a dozen escorts. His lightning danced between vessels, grounding through their shields, frying their systems. Where his hammer struck, bulkheads became shrapnel. Admiral Corvus watched the impossible unfold on his tactical displays and made a choice that would define his career. He ordered his fleet to support the anomaly.
All batteries. Target vessels already engaged by the lightning entity. Don't waste shots on.
Intact shields hit what he's already weakened. Coordinate with his assault patterns. It worked devastatingly well. Thor would crack a ship open, Imperial lance batteries would pour fire into the wound. What would have been a battle of attrition became a massacre. Within 8 hours, the Chaos fleet was broken and fleeing into the warp. But Chaos doesn't retreat without leaving presence. As the last corrupted vessels translated out, they detonated their warp cores simultaneously. Not to create explosions, though, those came but to tear reality open. Massive warp breaches flowered across the sector like wounds in space itself. From them poured the real assault, demon legions, greater and lesser, in numbers that blotted out the stars.
This wasn't a raid. This was Armageddon.
Thor and Hulk found themselves at the center of an apocalypse. Greater demons manifested, lords of change that rewrote physics, bloodthirsters that carved through reality, great unclean ones that brought plague to the void.
Thousands of lesser demons swarmed like locusts.
Thor called down the largest storm he'd ever manifested. Lightning forked across light seconds, striking demon after demon, burning them back to warped stuff.
But even he had limits.
Even gods grew tired. Hulk fought with mathematical simplicity. Grab, smash, throw, repeat. A bloodthirster challenged him. He tore its wings off and strangled it with them. A lord of change tried to reality warp him into oblivion. He was too angry to be erased and headbutted the demon into conceptual dissolution. He was tiring too. Even the Hulk couldn't fight forever, but he'd die before he stopped. They reunited on a fragment of destroyed ship hull, back to back, surrounded by infinite enemies. Thor was bleeding from dozens of wounds.
Hulk's skin was lacerated and burned. Both were still standing.
"This may be our end, friend," Thor said between lightning strikes. Hulk grinned.
"Good fight, then." Then the Imperium's reinforcements arrived. Not just one fleet, 7.
Not just Imperial Navy Space Marine strike cruisers, Mechanicus arc ships, even a Grey Knight's vessel that had been en route to another war zone. They'd all received the same astropathic message: 2 unknown entities holding back a demonic incursion through sheer will. Verification required. What they found was carnage beyond calculation. And at its center, a god and a monster still fighting. The tide turned again. Combined Imperial and Anomaly firepower broke the demon assault. The warp breaches sealed. The sector was saved at horrific cost. 9 worlds scoured clean, billions dead, an entire sector fleet crippled.
But it had been saved.
Admiral Corvus opened a Vox channel to Thor. "Unknown entity, I don't know what you are, but you saved us. If that means anything to your kind, thank you." Thor smiled grimly. "It means everything. It's why we do it."
Hulk just wanted food and a place to sleep.
Preferably somewhere nobody would shoot at him for at least a day. The Imperium still branded them heretics. But rumors spread. Among common soldiers, whispered stories emerged of gods who protected without demanding worship.
Of monsters who killed only enemies.
Of heroes the Imperium had forgotten how to recognize. The legend was beginning. The Wanderer's hope drifted through the void, running on minimal power, hidden in the debris field of a dead system. Inside, Thor sat in the observation deck, watching distant stars through a viewport scarred by weapons fire. Hulk was nearby, reverted to Banner now, smaller and more human, but still exhausted. "We can't keep doing this," Banner said quietly. His voice carried the weight of someone who'd lived multiple lifetimes of violence. "Every time we help, more forces come hunting us. Every world we save becomes a target because we were there." Thor nodded slowly. "I know. I have fought endless wars before, but this galaxy..." He struggled for words. "There is no winning here, only endurance, only survival at terrible cost. The people we've saved will likely die anyway, just more slowly." Banner leaned against the bulkhead. "The Imperium is built on fear. Fear of aliens, fear of chaos, fear of change, fear of hope. We represent everything they've trained themselves to destroy unknown variables that don't fit their doctrine. And yet they still fight," Thor replied. "Soldiers who will never see victory, holding lines that will eventually break, defending an empire that treats them as expendable. There is nobility in that, tragic, futile nobility." Hulk stirred in Banner's consciousness. Banner smiled slightly. "He says we should keep smashing things that need smashing. His philosophy is simpler than ours." "Sometimes simple is correct," Thor said. "We are warriors. We protect. That purpose doesn't change just because the enemy is infinite." They sat in silence for a while, 2 beings displaced across universes, trying to find meaning in a galaxy designed to destroy meaning. Eventually, Banner spoke again. "What do we do now? We're wanted by the Imperium, hunted by chaos, probably on every Xenos faction's radar as anomalies to be studied or destroyed." Thor stood, stretching muscles that still ached from the last battle.
We do what we've always done. We find those who need help and provide it.
We stand between the innocent and the darkness.
We refuse to let this galaxy's cruelty make us cruel in return. That sounds exhausting.
It is.
But heroism always is.
The ship's auger system suddenly activated, detecting another distress signal. This one from a mining colony under assault, unclear whether orcs, chaos raiders, or something worse. Standard Imperial response time: 3 weeks. The colony would be dead in 3 days. Thor and Banner exchanged looks. No words needed. They both knew what came next. Banner sighed and felt Hulk rising to the surface.
We're doing this, aren't we? Would you prefer otherwise?
No. But I'm allowed to complain about it. The transformation began, skin shifting to green, muscles expanding. Banner's consciousness receding as Hulk emerged. When the change completed, Hulk cracked his knuckles and grinned. Hulk ready to smash more bad guys.
Thor activated the ship's engines. Then let us be about our work, friend.
The asterisk Wanderer's hope asterisk turned toward the distress signal, a tiny vessel against infinite darkness, carrying 2 impossible heroes toward another impossible fight. Behind them, across the sector, stories spread through the Imperial networks. Unofficial, unverified, technically heretical stories. About a warrior who commanded storms and refused to let innocents die. About a green monster who fought demons with his bare hands and never asked for payment. About gods who walked among mortals not as distant tyrants but as protectors. The ecclesiarchy tried to suppress the stories. The Inquisition issued execution orders. But stories don't die easily, especially when soldiers desperately need something to believe in besides endless war.
Some called them myths.
Others called them heretics. Very few called them what they actually were: heroes. On a dozen worlds, children who'd seen Thor fight would grow up remembering that nobility was still possible. On a dozen more, soldiers who'd watched Hulk charge into impossible odds would remember that rage could protect instead of destroy. The seeds Thor and Hulk planted were small, and most would never take root in the Imperium's poisoned soil.
But some would.
And in a galaxy where hope was heresy, even small seeds were revolutionary. Far above, in the warp, the dark gods watched these anomalies continue their futile crusade, and felt something they rarely experienced: uncertainty. These beings could not be corrupted, could not be killed easily, could not be predicted or controlled or turned. Worse, they inspired others, made mortals remember that courage existed outside the Emperor's doctrine, made them question whether survival through suffering was truly the only path.
The dark gods decided to wait,
to watch, to plan. Because the galaxy was patient, and entropy always won eventually. Even heroes fell. Even gods died. The Imperium would break Thor's spirit. The endless war would consume Hulk's rage.
It was only a matter of time.
But until that day came, Thor and Hulk would keep fighting. Not because they could win,
but because someone had to try.
And as their ship disappeared into the void, carrying them toward another hopeless battle, a final truth settled over the sector like dust. The galaxy had forgotten what heroes looked like. Now it was being forced to remember, whether it wanted to or not.